What's up, everybody? I got Damian Thompson here of Lead Fuse. We're super pumped because Damian is a living, breathing sales professional. I think you've been doing this for like 20 years, 15 years. I don't know. It feels like forever.
Multiple decades, let's say it that way. So,
Multiple decades. And he's still young, right? So, Damian, you mind just giving a quick overview of what your experience in sales?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm currently the co-founder and the chief customer officer at Lead Fuse. I've been selling software since the mid 90s, enterprise, startup, everything in the middle. Primarily sales. Now I started in support, got into sales. Now I'm doing customer success a lot, which is a little bit of both, which is nice. But a big fan of biz dev. I've always been, and even in the good old days before we had the really hyper focused, hyper personalized, or kind of job roles in sales, I was always the hunter. I'm a biz dev guy. That's what I like to do. I've been doing cold emails since about 2007, back in the bad old days when you had to go out and figure it out yourself and do it all manually and figure out people's email addresses and email them personally one-on-one. And so cold email has been a big focus of mine the last decade or so. But all sorts of outbound, lead gen, whether it's the phone or in networking or in person or events or whatever it happens to be. I'm a hunter. I like to go out and find new customers.
Sweet. All right. So you probably have learned a couple dozen lessons here, a couple, maybe hundreds. What's your, in terms of follow up, when you're following up, however, if it's after a meeting, if someone's not responding, do you have any rules or kind of principles you kind of go by?
Yeah, I wish I had a really sexy one. Stelly at Closeout has the whole follow up until you die kind of thing, which it's a cute little quip. I kind of disagree a little bit. I think there's a time you should turn it off, right? But I think the thing about follow up is I will say that 99% of sales reps that I've known, though whether I've managed them or just talked to them, don't follow up enough, right? And so they quit very early. And I would say, I used to say, follow up until it hurts, I think is the way to do it, right? So when you're like, okay, this is probably the last time I need to contact this person, then that's the right time to do it. But you can't follow up too much. I think, in the earlier part of an engagement, whether that's a new deal or an existing customer or whatever it happens to be. But I would say the like all things in sales, the more you can turn into a process, the more success you're going to have. So rather than just like winging it and saying, hey, who am I supposed to follow up today? Having a process, and whether that's a 2-point, a 10-point, a 20-point touch system, I don't care. But having one you kind of use over and over and over again, and having tools do the thinking for you. So you shouldn't be thinking about following up on your own. It should be in your CRM or in whatever project management tool or task tool or whatever you use. You should have a process. It should be mapped out, and you should actually follow that process.
Makes sense. Yeah, absolutely. Are you doing any follow-up or any type of any follow-up sequences outside of or process outside of email when you're doing a cold email campaign?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, right now I'm literally just working on our inbound leads follow-up process. So we're adding a lot more touch points. So not only are they getting the kind of automated marketing automation emails they're getting from us based on the touching, we're creating kind of a playbook, an SOP for the sales team as well. So, okay, on day one, we're doing a lot of personalized video. Like the Vidyards, the Looms, those kind of tools of like doing a real quick video once you've qualified that customer. So we've created a quick SOP of, we want to qualify them within an hour of them signing up. If they're qualified within 24 hours, send them a personalized Loom video. Then the second day we try to add them on social, so like LinkedIn or whatever. And so that's another touch point. Then a personal email from us, then a call. And so there's a SOP that lays out like a cadence that we do for a lot more touch. And multi-channel touch, I think, is the thing too. It's not just email. Like obviously, email is very important, and it's our primary tool these days for contacting people. But it doesn't mean the other ways of contacting people don't work. Especially, I'm a big fan of social. Once there's a relationship, I think social selling gets a lot of press, and I think it's a hard way to do it as a lead gen way. But I think once you have a relationship, once they've come to your site, once they've entered into a funnel somehow, I think social becomes very powerful.
I love it. I mean, I think that the key thing you said that really resonated with me, and I started thinking about my funnel and all this stuff, is omni-channel, right? Phone, social, all these things. There's multiple touch points. You mentioned video. I think that's a huge thing, right? Like we switched for our agency from using like Uber Conference or as a phone system to Zoom, and all of our calls are now video based with our salespeople. And I can tell you that there is no lead, even if we don't close them, that doesn't fully respond yes or no. Then there's no
Right.
MIA anymore, right? It's
Right.
like you don't bail on people you have a relationship. You ask for them properly. So that's super, super near and dear to my heart. In a follow-up, are there any things, like any words, phrases, anything you would like avoid saying, or things you maybe see used too often?
Yeah. So there's a couple of phrases that I'll say, but before the phrases, I want to talk about kind of philosophy here. So
Okay.
what I see a lot, especially with younger sales reps, and I mean like younger in age sales reps, is this kind of passive aggressive tonality. There's this expectation of something, right? So, hey, I'm following up because you haven't responded to me yet. Or, hey, I see you haven't done this yet. Or that can read very passive aggressive, I think, right? So it's not your prospect's responsibility to do what you want them to do. Right? It's your responsibility to get them to take the actions you want them to take. And so it's kind of a passing of the buck. And so some of those phrases I hate are like just checking in, or touching base, or those kind of things. Especially when it comes to any sort of text, whether that's a chat or email or SMS, I don't care what it is, but if you're writing it to someone, they're reading it. Think of that English teacher you hated with that red pen, right? So just aggressively edit, right? So
Mhm.
words like, hey, I'm just checking in, are just wasted. Like there's literally zero purpose for them whatsoever. It's not a preamble. It doesn't start a conversation well. And at worst, someone can read that as passive aggressive and say, hey, yeah, it's not my job to respond to you, right? And so I just think that when you're writing a response to someone, or you're engaging them on the phone or any other way, that remember that it's your responsibility to get them excited. Right? It's not their responsibility to do what you want them to do. And so anytime you kind of expect that from them and kind of let them know that's your expectation, just be careful when you do that, because it doesn't come across the way you think it does a lot of times. It comes across as, being needy or aggressive or whatever those things are. And instead, I just find that just getting straight to the point's a much better way of doing it, especially when we're talking about email, because, there's all kinds of weird stats out there, but I know even a old Luddite like me, most of my emails I'm reading on my phone, right? Or maybe a small laptop. And so the more white space, the better. The more you get to the point, the better. The more likely I am to actually engage with you if actually you get to the point and don't. I love those. They spend a paragraph talking about how they're not going to waste my time. Hey, I know you're busy. I don't want to waste your time. So and like you spend a paragraph telling me how you're not going to waste my time, right? You're wasting my time telling me you're not going to waste my time.
Absolutely. I think it's over. I feel like long emails are like, that's like 99% of emails are too long, right? They need to be short. You think the fact that I wanted to follow up because I don't want to waste your time, but here's
Right.
Blob, right? Like
Right.
there's always a but, right? So that's all. That's awesome. So I'm glad you said that, because it's feel better because it's not just me then. If you think sales emails are bad, by the way, you should check out PR emails.
Right. No, I do. So I say that so I've been in software for a long time. Like the worst marketers in the world are big corporate technology marketers. Like they're the worst. Like they do these huge 4,000 word press releases because one little feature got released in a new tool that
Yeah.
nobody cares about and that no one else, and they think they're crushing it, right? Because like they're thinking word count, they're thinking column inches, they're thinking all those crazy things that don't really work anymore. But yes, that's crazy. And I think the problem is that, email, like copywriting and writing in general, is different everywhere. And I think that's the problem, is we get taught in school a bad way of writing. We get taught to write to word count, right? We get taught to, hey, I want a 4-page report, I want whatever. And so that's a horrible way to write to begin with. So we learn bad writing habits in school. And then if we're smart enough to go read some copywriting books, we learn some better writing habits.
Mm-hmm.
But what works like on a sales page doesn't work for an email market message, right? And so, but even an email, what works in inbound email doesn't work for outbound email. So if someone signs up on your website for something, they've kind of already checked off that they like your tone, they like your personality, they like your style, they like those things. And so if that style is longer and like kind of funny and playful and whatever, cool, because they've already said yes to that tone right on your website. Whereas cold email, you're a stranger to this person, right? And so you're showing up thinking you're being all clever, or being, you're trying to write all these words because you think you're going to explain everything to them in one email. Like that's just the wrong way to approach it. Like short is always better when in outbound, I think.
Yeah, fair enough. So we talked about like lots about what you would do, what you shouldn't do, what not. But what, from your personal experience, like how do you follow up on an outbound campaign?
Yeah. So, I think the big thing that we're looking for these days is personalization. So if we talked about the early days of cold email, So, those like in the late, like 2010, I think was when I really heavily got into it, and like had a VA in the Philippines kind of helping me build lists and do all that kind of good stuff. I mean, and my response rates were crazy. I was getting it. I was sending out one email sequence and I'd say, hey, click this link to schedule a time with me. And I'd have like a 10% clicking rate, right? Because like no one else was doing it. And so as more people do it as a technique, whether it's sales or marketing becomes more, used, it becomes kind of harder to rise above the noise. And so by far, if I didn't know you, Sujin, and I wanted to get your attention, and I would use cold email is how I would do that. If I couldn't find a relationship we knew had shared, right, can get an introduction, I'd use cold email. But what I would do is I'd spend a lot of time getting to know you, getting to know more things about you, find out things about you, and then I'd write really personal emails about you to you from me. Right. And so you'd say, okay, this person, it's a one human being, write an email to another human being, and they spend enough time to learn enough about me to kind of rise through all the noise. Like that's an email that would work, which is awesome. You can't do that at scale, right? So like that, I mean, that's awesome if you're looking for one specific person, but if you're looking to actually build a lead gen system for your business, you can't do that. And so what we're really focused on now is say, okay, well, you use systems like Mailshake or LeadFuse or whatever you use out there to actually start the conversations with people. And then once you're seeing they're engaging with you, then that's time to personalize those follow-ups, right? And saying, okay, this person's now, engaged with the content somehow. They've opened every email I've sent, even though they haven't responded yet. Well, how do I get them to respond? I'm gonna get them to respond by actually sending them a personal email. Now I'm gonna spend 5-10 minutes researching their website, their LinkedIn profile, and trying to find an angle, find a hook to come in and talk about some shared experience we have, something that shows that, again, it's one human being writing an email to another human being, and you're going to see far more results that way. But you can't do that 100 times a day. You can do that 5 times a day, 10 times a day, whatever that happens to be. But like that's what we're seeing a lot of success with internally, myself, and also a lot of our customers is when they take that next step of personalization.
Gotcha. That makes sense. I think personalization is the most overutilized in the worst way, because I feel like people like your company name. I know my company name,
right?
But I don't remember my dog's birthday. If you can tell me my dog's birthday, I mean, who knows that, right? Like externally, but like personalization needs to be actual information that's real.
And relevant and specific to you, right?
Yeah.
So if I write, you're right. The mail merge thing is just ridiculous. Right? Hi, Sujin. I'm sure at Mailshake you are very important. It's very important for you to learn this lesson, Sujin. Like I see your name 4 times in the cold email, right? And I just like, cool, dude. Like I know how mail merge works, right? I mean, there's nothing about that. But if it was instead, it was like, hey, I see this, this, and this, and I just read this about you, and I see you went to college here, and those kind of things. Like it's in the old days of sales. It's like you talk about the fish on the wall. The guy has a big fish mounted on the wall. You say, hey, how are you into fishing? I am into fishing. Awesome. You had that conversation around that. But like it's the modern day technical version of that, right? Finding some sort of shared interest, shared connection. But and from an email point of view or from an electronic point of view, it's about, hey, at least show me the courtesy that you've spent a few minutes to go learn a little bit about me, right? I'm not, this email could only be addressed to me. Right, because you've talked about my history, my past, whatever I've done, or some interest I have that you've learned from social media or whatever. Like, but when I read it, it's not like, okay, I'm email number 27 of 100 you're sending today. Right, it feels like you wrote it for me.
Yeah, absolutely, that makes sense. Do you ever include like articles, content? Like, would you ever like, and when you're following up, is there anything you kind of put in the email or reference around, or is it just like?
I mean, we do. I think content's a big winner. I think that you spend all this time creating content that's hopefully resonates with your audience and resonates with your users, and you use that content to attract traffic, obviously through SEO and through search, but also to kind of move them through the funnel. When they're in the funnel, they kind of come educate themselves. I think you spend a lot of time, energy, and money creating that content. To not utilize it in outbound makes no sense to me. Right. And so absolutely, I want to link to that stuff. And I found sometimes, depending on the market, a lot of times it's really valuable if you link to third-party content. Right. So if you're willing to, like, especially if it's a very reputable source, the Wall Street Journal article or something like that, like something like that, that's in context to what you're talking about. But again, because what I'm looking at is I'm looking for engagement. I'm looking to see if that person, an open is great, right? But are they actually doing more with the email once they open, other than obviously the response, the reply is the gold standard, what we want, but what kind of steps can we have in the middle?
Got it. No, that's awesome. All right, last question for you. What's the best follow-up email you've received?
Ooh, that's a good question. Best follow-up email I've received.
or follow up in general?
I'll say follow-up because actually it is. So, we had a vendor actually that we were looking at to kind of augment some of our business last year. Totally online, had not even talked to them yet. We'd gone to their website. I think we downloaded one of their data packages or something like that to read something they had. And then I think it was an email or two between us, and then all of a sudden a physical package showed up at our office. And it wasn't so much the contents of the box. Like, it doesn't have to be this kind of crazy stunt kind of marketing. It was more just, in modern day, getting a package from somebody was very unique, and the tone was in line with our conversation. And so they'd taken the time to not just physically mail this box, but actually then there was a handwritten card inside. It referenced the conversations we'd already had. So I knew it wasn't some just mass market. They're pumping out 100 boxes they're sending a day. It was actually a part of their follow-up process, and it stuck out. And we ended up doing business with them, and not because of the box, but it was definitely a very positive sign. When we were talking to 4 or 5 vendors, they automatically go to the top of the list because it feels like they're doing more, because they are. They're doing more than just expecting our business.
I love it. Yeah, I think the importance of standing out, and again, you mentioned the omni-channel approach, right? So,
Right.
the top of the list. That's awesome. Well, Damian, thank you for your time. Where can people find you? Where can they learn more?
Yeah, LeadFuse. So leadfuse.com, LeadFuze.com is the website. I'm on LinkedIn, Damian Thompson. Email me, Damian@leadfuse.com. I love email, clearly, so happy to help in any way I can if you have questions.
Awesome. Thanks, dude.